everybody. Welcome today to the Animation Trends event for 2023, hosted by Toon. And today I have with me Aj Grand-Scrutton, who is the CEO and creative director from Dlala Studios. Hi, how's it going today?
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
So my job title is CEO, but it's much more fancy sounding than the reality because it's a job title I gave myself when I started the company in my mum's garage. So really, the important role I do is I'm creative director on all our projects, and I've been on everything to date. And currently, I'm just finishing up creatively directing Disney Illusion Island, our new game starring Mickey Mouse, Minnie Mouse, Donald Duck, and Goofy.
Yeah, that's looking great. I saw the release footage that you guys put out. I think it was back in September, and that's one of the things I actually wanted to say about what you guys do. That I've actually been playing Battletoads off and on. Still haven't beat it yet. Yeah, I think I'm at like Act 2, the start of Act 2, because I have 17 games on the go. But I dig how you guys make everything look like an actual cartoon. But like, there's been tons of games that have been done that in the past, that have tried to do that in the past. But like, it struck me that when I had it up on my big screen, that like, because you guys keep the heads-up display to a minimum, it looks like an animated show. It's sharp. It looks pretty, and I dig that. And that's what I really loved about Disney Illusion Island. Like, I was just like, that's super dope. And it's just, I don't know, what's your process into creating these things like that? Like, it's just, they're just beautiful games to look at.
Oh, thank you very much. And yeah, kind of you got it kind of spot on there for us. Battletoads especially, our goal was to make a playable cartoon. And that was one of our pillars for our project. So that wasn't just in the art and the animation. That was everything we did. We wanted it to feel like we were recapturing that feeling of watching Saturday morning cartoons and watching Cartoon Network. Yeah. Like, we wanted that experience to be there. But obviously with the added layer of being able to actually play the games. And the way we actually approach making games is very heavily influenced by the animation industry. A lot of it came off the back of, I read Creativity Inc. when we were in our early days, and it really made me kind of refocus how we build our games. But, you know, we build everything. Everything is hand-keyed in the actual gameplay. So we actually build out the whole game in pencil test. So as we're going, you know, we do the white block phase, but then we actually have the pencil test phase where you can play the game and everything is just scratchy lines, just flood-filled white. And that kind of really allows us to capture the right feel and kind of the right kind of approach to our inputs and find the fun. And then obviously we polish it up to the lovely standard that our team does.
Yeah, like that's always the thing that I love about that game. Just I could sit there and just look at all the animations. Like that was actually the first thing I did whenever I started playing it. I just sat there and just gazed at the animations and the idols. Like, I love how you guys nailed all the moves and just you know, every one of those text Avery style. Like, whoosh, that was the thing I remember the most of the other ones. So, but what kind of game is Disney Illusion Island? Tell us about that a bit.
Yeah, so Disney Illusion Island is a 1 to 4 player couch co-op platform game. But it takes place over this big, wonderful, new, seamless world we've created, and it's all about kind of navigating the world, finding new abilities which unlock new areas. You'll come across a lot of really interesting, brand new characters, and you get to go on this never before seen, brand new adventure with Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and Goofy, which has been an absolute honor to obviously be able to write and make this game. And yeah, it's really about recapturing that fun. It's about having a great time. It's got a really great kind of set of settings that kind of cater for different difficulties. And I think people are going to really enjoy it. Well, I hope they do, because we've really enjoyed making it.
Yeah, you definitely see how much passion has gone into making, just from the footage that I've seen. I had to ask, did you guys not take inspiration, but were you inspired at all by you may even, I don't know if you remember this, but back in the SNES days, they had Mickey's Magical Quest, I think it was called, by Capcom. And that, to me, is still like one of my favorite platformers that I've ever played. And as soon as I saw your game, that's exactly what I thought of. I'm like, oh, this is cool. This is totally like Magical Quest, or like Maui Mallard and Cold Shadow, which was a game that also kind of fell under the radar. So did you guys take any inspiration from that, or just from general side scrollers?
Definitely. I mean, the Fab Four have got an incredible history of video games, like especially in the 90s. I'm really glad to hear you mention Magical Quest, because obviously the big ones are always Castle of Illusion and World of Illusion. I mean, my childhood copy of World of Illusion and Quackshot for the Mega Drive, the Genesis, is right over there.
Nice.
But yeah, like I love Magical Quest. I absolutely adore it. It's probably my favorite Mickey game, to be honest.
Yeah,
it just gave something different. And yeah, so like definitely took inspiration. You know, the wonderful and horrible thing at the same time is there's a lot of people on the team that made this game that weren't born when those games came out. So we had that lovely bit at the start of every project. We myself and my lead designer Grant will put like a research list together, and like we'll bring those games into the office. We'll get the old consoles out. So we did that with this title, and obviously, you know, the wonderful thing about Mickey is there is this big history of Mickey games. Yeah. So we have had this scary thing of having to introduce people to be like, hey, this game came out 10 years before you were born. But yeah, like we genuinely loved it. You know, we love the IP. We love those games. And yeah, like I said, it's great to hear you mention Magical Quest. It's a fantastic game.
Yeah, it's one that I've gone back to through various ways to try to play, because I don't actually have the original cartridge anymore, and I had it at one point, but things get lost, and as soon as I saw that footage, I'm like, they must have taken inspiration from that. But it's wild to think that there's some people on your team who like didn't even exist at that point.
Yeah.
It's something that I find as we keep going on, that a lot of the games we thought are back in the day for us are actually really not even on the radar. But something like Earthworm Jim, which is something that I think, like as I played Battletoads, you definitely guys must have been inspired by Earthworm Jim in some way.
Oh yeah, I mean, one right there. Look at that. Eric, our animation director, he worked on Earthworm Jim 1 and 2. So his first ever job was cleaning up the line work on Earthworm Jim 1 and 2. Mike Dietz and Ed Schofield, who were the lead animators on Earthworm Jim, designed the Battletoads with us. So Jim is Jim is one of my all-time favorite games. Not just for that genre, not just for that all-time favorite games, especially Jim 2. So that had a massive influence. I think especially in what we do kind of animation and gameplay wise, I think you can see a lot of the early Battletoads and Jim kind of in there. Like you kind of called it perfectly Tex Avery, like those big Tex Avery expressions. Yeah. Obviously the morphs, there's the homages there to the classic wolf scene. Yeah. So yeah, like games like Jim, have had massive influence on us, both as individuals, like as we've progressed all of us through our careers. But yeah, definitely on what we do.
Yeah, no, it's definitely evident whenever I see that game, like that you guys were inspired by that. Have you ever beaten any of the Jim games? I have never beaten them. They've always kicked my butt.
I beat 1 and 2, and I never played 3D because it was 3D. Exactly. So but yeah, I beat 1 and 2. I don't reckon I could do it now though. I think if I tried now, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Dude, that's like me with Battletoads. Legit, I have not ever gone beyond the speeder bike level in either Battletoads or Super Battletoads. I don't know what exists beyond those two levels.
It's such a shame because all the best stuff is past that level. But I only beat it for the first time like in my teenage years, once I had an emulator and I could save states. I will say that when Rare released Rare Replay, they actually added in a rewind feature. So if you when we first started Battletoads, Gemma, who's our now operations director, but was our producer, hadn't played. So I was like, "Oh, look, come round and we'll play the game." She's self-professed, like she hasn't really played games since the Dreamcast. Like that was her last console. So obviously, this person who hasn't played games for the better part of 2 decades, being like, "Okay, we've got to get past the speeder bike level." I think even with the rewind feature, I think it still took us like an hour and a half to get past that level.
They really wanted to hammer people with difficulty Rare with that level, because like I've noticed that my reflexes have gotten slower, so I'm even worse.
Oh yeah, I mean, I still can't believe there's people out there that have memorized it to the point they can do it with their blindfolds on, and like, yeah, it's a hell of a level.
It's bonkers, man. But that's crazy those games, man. I love them. But back to Disney Illusion. How long has it taken you guys to develop this game? And how many people were involved in the production of it?
Yeah, sure. So we started Disney Illusion Island. We finished Battletoads. The team took 2 weeks off, but I finished Battletoads on the Friday, and I was writing this by the Monday. So really, we started it like the full team came on around September 2020. Okay. So it's been, the better part 2.5 years we've been working on it. And obviously we've scaled the team up and down, like including if you include all our contractors or our like wonderful partners in QA and localization, the team at its biggest was like in the 70s. But like the full-time Dlala staff, we're about 36. So we've kind of gone up and down between that kind of like 40 to 70 range for most of the project.
Okay.
But it's been a hell of an experience.
Yeah, myself, I've only worked in the mobile game development space for a few years, and even that's just things change often so much with like crew size and that kind of thing. So you can imagine it's the same thing with developing something for console and that kind of thing. So what were some of the things that you guys learned from making Battletoads, both like what not to do and what to do, that have been applicable to Disney Illusion now that you guys have been working on that? Like, how are they similar and how are they different?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing we did in Illusion Island that we didn't do in Battletoads was I didn't put 14 different game genres in it. That was a big that makes a big difference. Yeah, look, Battletoads was wonderful. We loved that game. We had a great time making it, but like we ran hot for that whole project. We made early mistakes. Like we put everyone on the project from day one, and it kind of meant we were clamoring to find work for people because they were free rather than because it was the right time. And it kind of really negatively impacted our pre-production cycle, which was really small anyway. Like Battletoads only had around 2 or 3 months of pre-production.
That's pretty crazy.
So when we did Illusion Island, we had a bigger pre-production period. Like we tried to kind of approach it a bit more sensibly. We've still made a lot of mistakes along the way, of course. Like there's definite areas we'd still need to improve on for when we move forward. Like, really focusing on proving out a lot of the art. Illusion Island looks beautiful. The team have done an incredible job.
Yeah.
But I put them under way too much pressure. Like we were looking to deliver like a vertical slice at the end of pre-production, and the pre-production cycle stopped being pre-production and became very milestone focused, and like that wasn't right. So we've made sure for what we're doing next that isn't the case. But Battletoads taught us so much. It was the biggest game we'd done. It was our first fully released 2D hand animated game, right? Like there is tens of thousands of animation frames in that game.
That's bonkers.
We learned such a lot about what a modern 2D game feels like, looks like, how you develop it. It taught us a lot. We couldn't have made Disney Illusion Island if we hadn't made Battletoads. And that's not just because it helped us build the team or have finances, or like we couldn't have done it because we couldn't have gone into Disney Illusion Island the team we were when we went into Battletoads. We had to be the team we were when we came out of Battletoads. That was kind of really the biggest things.
Force in the fire kind of thing, sort of deal.
Exactly.
Yeah. Have you noticed a difference in terms of like how you approached handling an IP like Battletoads, which is a fairly big IP with a lot of legacy, but when you compare that to like something like Mickey and all that, like are there other pressures that you feel necessarily because of the fact that it is a Disney property and Disney's such a massive brand? So have you felt any more pressure or less pressure? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So we've not felt pressure from Disney. We felt pressure from ourselves and the weight of what Mickey means. When we did Battletoads, my pitch from day one on Battletoads was, we're not making a Battletoads game for Battletoads fans, right? Because the last game was 26 years before ours. I said, and I said to Rare and Microsoft, I was like, look, a third of that user base is probably dead. Like, a third of that user base is dead. A third of them probably don't play games anymore. And the other third are probably like me, guys in their 30s who don't get that much time with games. So if we target the Battletoads audience, we're targeting a tiny audience. What we have to do is capture a new fan base the way that Battletoads in 91 captured us. Mickey is very different, right? Mickey is more than just a character. Like Mickey, as cheesy as it sounds, like Mickey is love, he's hope, he's I don't know if you've seen the documentary that came out on Disney Plus. Like you watch what people say about Mickey Mouse, not the animators, they're just as important, but you watch what the fans say. And these characters, Mickey, Minnie, Donald, and Goofy, they mean something to people. Like they mean a lot. And they meant a lot to us. Like we didn't do this because we were like, Mickey's a big IP. We did this because we're Mickey Mouse fans. Like, you know, for me, this was a real pleasure getting to dig into some of my old favorite shorts, like Lonesome Ghost, like, but I felt that like we wanted to make something new. We wanted to tell a story that is different to previous Mickey stories. We wanted to do designs of these characters that paid homage to what had come before and took the elements I loved, like, you know, white face Mickey is much more of my thing than like beige face Mickey, like, and so we focused on that side of things. But like, it had to feel like a Mickey game, and these characters had to feel authentic. Like, what I didn't want is I didn't want people to play the game thinking that it was just a game that had the IP shoved on it. Like from day one, like one of our pillars for this game, the same way that playable cartoon was a pillar for Battletoads, our pillar for this game was distinctly Disney, uniquely Dlala. We wanted something that felt like a Disney experience, but a Disney experience that only we could make. So yeah, like Disney have been wonderful. Like they've been so easy to work with. We speak to them every day, and we've had this wonderful relationship. And I've put much more pressure on myself and the team about Mickey than they have. They have guided us to doing what's right for the brand. But like, because, you know, we haven't tried to break this. We've not tried to break this IP. We've tried to be respectful of it. We've pushed boundaries, I feel, with it. But because of that, like, it's been an easy process, right? Because we're not trying to go in there and make Mickey be offensive or, you know, make Donald say curse words. We're not doing things that aren't what these characters would do. But Mickey means so much to so many people that, you know, that's something I've kept in mind every single day of this project.
Yeah, well, it's definitely showing and evident that that's what you guys are putting into this. Like, it's just, I can't say enough good things about what it looks like. I'm excited to, like, when you had mentioned earlier previously when we were talking before we started that, you know, it was going to go up soon, but it was just that I think you said the gold was going or something like that. But
yeah, so we're in the last couple of weeks of finishing up making the game. But yeah, it doesn't come out till July. Yeah,
I know, and I was just like, "Oh, what? It's coming out soon?" No, and then it didn't. I'm like, "Oh, it's July." And I'm like, "We're only March, lousy March." But you know, like one of the things that I'm curious about, because you guys have gone the hand-drawn route for animating characters, which, like, having done that myself, that takes a ton of time to do. And it's almost kind of one of those things where, like, when you're developing a game, because of the schedules you might have, it almost seems like you're shooting yourself in the foot by going that way. But ultimately, you want it to look a certain way. And I know with, like, the guys over at Cuphead, it took them a really long time to get their product out because, well, I mean, they did everything hand-drawn. What was the typical turnaround time from, like, you know, having the characters concepted and, you know, their model sheets made and then painted to, like, having it fully drawn and finished and dumped into engine? Like, what kind of timeline were you guys looking at for each character?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the thing with Cuphead as well, what a fantastic game, fantastic looking. I think the thing a lot of people don't realize is not only was that game hand animated, the person who hand animated it had never done hand animation before.
Yeah, that's true.
Taught himself to do that while making that game with that incredible animation. Yeah, so it really varies for us, right? So Lucy Kirikadu, our art director and lead character designer on Disney Illusion Island, designed all the Fab Four, designed kind of the main characters you'll see in the game. She would very quick, like, we'd hit those designs really quickly. It takes a couple of days to get the model sheets, the expression sheets done. And then really what our approach is we get stuff in the game when it's pencil test. So we don't move anything to clean up or final lines or colors until it's been in game and it's been signed off by myself and the animation director in game. Animations, one animation on average, depending on the size of it, would take a day to 3 days to do the kind of pencil tests. And, you know, different animators have different pencil test styles. India, who's like our in-house animator, who was on Battletoads, her pencil test obscenely clean. Like, she is super fast, and her like the cleanup artists absolutely adore her work because they get it through. But that will take, she's still quick, but India's might be on the longer side. Whereas Eric is very much, Eric's been doing this 20 plus years. He's similar to me. Like, our approach is like, let's get it scratchy, let's get it in. Yeah. Let's make sure the animation feels good, but like, we'll clean it up when we're ready to clean it up. So yeah, I'd say concept. So I'd say character design was a couple of days. Once we had a character we're happy with, a couple of days for turnarounds and expression sheets, 1 to 3 days on average for pencil tests, and about the same again for cleaning it up. We'd obviously submit all our pencil tests to Disney first, make sure that they're happy with how we're treating the characters. And then so really kind of, it's quite a quick turnaround, really, especially when you take into account like we will layer up like 6 or 7 animators on project at once.
Oh yeah, because that as you're describing it, it sounded like things were moving pretty quickly, and considering it's hand-drawn animation, that's actually pretty amazing. Because hand-drawn animation can be quite time-consuming for sure.
Definitely. And there's some big animations in there that weren't that quick. There's some big characters, intricate characters that weren't that quick. But like as an average, like I think it comes off the back of Battletoads. Like all the animation team, most of them had worked on Battletoads with us. And we had to do things quickly. Like we didn't have time to kind of take our time.
Did you have the character animators also doing the effects, or did you guys have an in-house effects artist doing all the hand-drawn effects for everything?
So we had separate VFX artists. Okay. So kind of the initial style exploration was done by Roberto. So Roberto did the VFX on Battletoads, and then Roberto actually left and went to Rare, ironically, to go work on CFC. And then we had a new VFX artist in called Raf, and then Raf kind of took it over, made the style really his own. And then we had support from a wonderful VFX artist called Nicholas as well. But yeah, all the VFX were kind of drawn and designed in 2D, but actually built out in Unity itself.
Okay. And how did you find what were some of the things and the features in Harmony that were helpful for getting what you were creating in our program, to getting it into Unity in Engine?
Yeah, I mean, we've been using now, Toon Boom Harmony stuff since 2015, since the first kind of Disney thing we were doing. So what's been really great for us is we've actually built our own pipelines on top of Unity with the Harmony method in mind. The biggest thing for us with Harmony is the color management side of things. Because I'd be lying if I didn't say I sometimes changed my mind a little bit too late. So being able to develop these palettes, which are kind of linked, we give them IDs, so we can do stuff like we've got an NPC called Digger, right? So we can do stuff like, Digger's nose color. And then if I suddenly decide I'm going to change my mind about what I want Digger's nose color to be, it's just changing that color in that ID and then re-exporting very quickly. That was a godsend on Battletoads, and it has been even more so on Illusion Island, especially because with the speed we work, we would sometimes, we'd always get approval at pencil test phase for the Fab 4 and anything Disney related. But with some of our new characters, we'd sometimes want to see them in game. So we would take those through to color. And then if Disney had notes or had really good suggestions and we wanted to tweak it, if we hadn't had that color management system, we'd have a lot of very angry cleanup artists who would have to be refilling all the animation again. So I think, that is the stuff I always sing the praises of with Harmony, And obviously, the whole pipeline for us is perfect. The way we can get stuff roughed out, it is what I find incredible. And it sounds like I'm doing a sales pitch now. Is, a lot of people know Harmony for the rigged stuff, right? Which is brilliant. And that's how we did the cutscenes in Battletoads. Our partners there built all those. They were rigged versions of our characters. But it does the hand-keyed stuff equally as well. So it's that flexibility of the software, which is brilliant. The fact that we can have that freedom to be the reason we did the rigged stuff in Battletoads is because we were the game is all action. The hand-keyed stuff is action. But we're really writing these cutscenes like a sitcom. So we don't need to be doing individual frames. We don't need to be doing morphs. What we need to do is have this really polished feeling, natural feeling characters. which meant we could do that split of going, you know what, we're going to do cutscenes rigged, in-game hand keyed, and it's not going to look weird switching between the two. So yeah, that's kind of what's always impressed me the most. Like I said, the color stuff is what saves us, but like it is that flexibility of the software, the fact it can support a pipeline as diverse as ours can be.
Yeah, and you guys, because you were hand drawing all the frames of the characters, were just exporting them as sprite sheets anyways, right? So it's just a matter of getting all those frames out and then bringing them to Unity.
Yeah, so we basically export everything as individual PNGs, and then we've got our own tool pipeline we use that goes into Unity, cuts it all up for us to our settings that we've pre-baked. But like it's as easy as 1, 2, 3, right? Like it's super quick for us. And yeah, it's just great. Like, you know, we'll be continuing to use it for every project we do this style of 2D on.
Yeah, and they've definitely added some new features to that for people who do want to do rigging animation. It makes it even easier to get stuff into Unity. So that's something that I'm excited to mess around with myself. So, but I was going to ask, what have been some of the interesting or challenging aspects of the production process between both projects that you found? What's the things that are stick out to you the most?
Yeah, so I think Battletoads, I did not scope the project. You know, the 14 game genres is not a hyperbole. There was 14 game genres, and the problem with that was this. If the game was built in 3D, that would have been hard. But being built in 2D, it meant that when you're playing the side-scrolling beat 'em up, the turbo bike, side-scrolling platformers, there are whole new sets of animations every time, right? There's no reuse between. Any time the toads are shown from a different perspective, that was a whole new set of 2D animations.
You must have been like, what did I do? Why did I want 14 genres?
My team was like, what have you done? What are you doing? And we cut stuff. That's the scary thing. We cut stuff. There was more stuff in that game at one point.
They're like, AJ, are you mad at us? Is that why you guys do all of this?
So that was super challenging. With Illusion Island, we'd never done a game like this. We knew how to do, you know, we've done platforming. We've had platforming in our heritage beyond Battletoads. But this kind of platforming, you know, these influences from these kind of Metroidvanias in terms of getting abilities, that was new to us. And building, we'd never done a Switch game, so it was a new thing. And then doing a game that after that first loading screen, there's no loading in this game. It's not levels, it's a big seamless world, right? So we've never done that. So there was a lot of first times for us, which is why kind of having that consistency of knowing our tool set, knowing how to animate, knowing how we're going to use harmony, like that stuff is great, because when we've got the amount of new stuff that we had never touched before, it's really that foundational stuff that we kind of took between projects that really makes it possible for us.
Yeah, no, it's I'm just thinking of that 14 genre.
It's honestly
Toad Shambo.
There's Toad Shambo. There was menial jobs when you have to give the massage. There's all the boss fights obviously were quite different to each other. You haven't got there yet, but there's the space games, which is a top-down shooter. There's a lot of different genres and a lot of different animation frames that made that game up.
Yeah, that's one of the things I really dug about like what you guys with Toes is that the boss fights were all different instead of just being like, you know, the same thing, rinse, repeat. Boss shows up, you beat him up, blah blah blah, and then he's gone.
So my team know this. I hate boss fights. As a player, I hate boss fights. As a game director, I hate them even more. For me, they are the most challenging thing to create. Like making a good. I'm so glad I've got Grant, our lead designer. Like, you know, he was lead designer on Battletoads and he smashed it. But on this project, I stepped back a bit more from the day-to-day design side, and he just owned it. And he figured out this approach to boss fights that even I could enjoy. But they're so challenging because obviously, like, you're trying to. They're like summaries. Like they're like, hey, this is like taking what you have learned but putting it in a different flavor. I absolutely hate making boss fights and I hate playing boss fights.
They're a weird thing. They're almost archaic when you think about game design today, about how like the boss fight just feels out of place in certain situations. You don't even need it. Like, because it's always the same thing, right? You just ramp up the difficulty, make the thing a bullet sponge, and then there you go, rinse, repeat. And it's just can be really frustrating because I can't think of the games offhand that I've played recently in the last few years, but I remember just be like, oh, another boss boss fight? Like, what?
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing, and I think that that feeling for boss fights makes a good boss fight feel good, right? Like our technical director Ben really enjoyed our games like Fury, which were just boss fight games, and that sounds like my worst nightmare.
Shadow of the Colossus.
Right, like, but when it's done right, it's fun, and you kind of really appreciate it. But the thing I have found, as a gamer, purely subjective opinion, obviously, is I do not like them. Like, I absolutely adored Metal Gear Rising, the Raiden game, and I never finished it because the last boss fight made me so angry. I just stopped playing.
That last boss fight had me tossing the controls. I'm like, again, he's evolving yet again, another form. Can we just have his ultimate form right away?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one drove me nuts too as well. But yeah, so one of the other things I was kind of wondering too is that, the creation of Dlala, and at what point did you decide in your career that you're like, okay, now's the time for me to jump into making my own studio? Because that's a giant, like, that's a big leap of faith, because most of the time you're starting out with nothing and you're like, I've got a hope, a dream, and an idea. Like, when did that hit you where you were like, I got to do my own thing and I got to like start this, but what the hell do I do?
Yeah, I mean, what the hell do I do? But I still have to this day. So that never got answered. Yeah, it was really timing more than anything. So me and Craig were co-founder of Dlala. We were both at Bossa. I was lead programmer. He was programmer. Okay. This is when Bossa was a small studio. They weren't making the games they make now. We'd released our first game. It picked up a BAFTA, and it was a great moment for us. But I thought I was going to be a Bossa for all my life, but it wasn't going how I thought it would, and it became clear that like it wasn't the long term for me. And kind of when I left there, like I spoke to my parents and I said like, hey, like this whole indie thing is quite big right now. It's 2012. I said, look, if I'm ever going to do it, like I have to do it now. Like I've got no mortgage, I've got no kids, like and my parents, my whole family has always been wonderful. So like they were just like, okay, well look, Dad will build you an office in the garage. Like you don't pay rent for the next few months. But when like your savings runs out, like you'll have to look at getting a job. And I was like, yeah, of course. And when I decided to leave, like I spoke to Craig, and Craig and I had worked at Jagex, and then when I went to Bossa, I took him to Bossa, and like we had this conversation, and we were like, look, we're kind of destined to be together. Like if everywhere we go, the other one is going to follow anyway. Like why don't we do this now? Like, so I moved into Mum's garage. Craig moved into his girlfriend's mum's spare bedroom. We had in Canadian dollars, we had about $5,000 equivalent between us. We had no plan, no game idea. Like it was just kind of like we wanted to make games for ourselves, and we wanted to make games with each other, and that was really all we needed. Never ever did we predict this. Like not in a million years would I have been like, yeah, I'll be getting interviewed because the studio's 37 people make Mickey Mouse game. All we cared about, from pretty much the first day, our phrase to this day that still exists, making games we love for people to love with people we love, right? Like that has been what we did. And at that point, the people we loved was each other. Like, and this friendship was like all we needed. But yeah, it just turned into this absolute roller coaster where within 6 months we did a Windows 8 launch title. We ended up being the first internally incubated studio by Microsoft. 10.5 years down the line, we are here. We're like 36, 37 full-timers. We did Battletoads. We're finishing up Illusion Island. We're moving to 2 projects. Like it's really unexpected. But if our parents hadn't been willing to just let us, I won't say like we didn't mooch off of anyone. Do you know what I mean? Like, we were working
support
24/7 round the clock. Yeah. But if our families hadn't been winning, it's such a privileged position to have been in. Like, this is why I always, when I get asked to go to universities and colleges, and I'm like, don't look at me and think, hey, this is the blueprint. Because if my parents hadn't been my parents, if they hadn't cared that I wasn't going to be able to pay rent for a few months, do you know what I mean? If so much coincidence, like the only reason we did Windows 8 launch is because Develop Conference let us have student price for one of us. So I went, I spoke to Microsoft. Doing the Windows 8 launch title got us introduced to Develop magazine, which ended up on the desk of Lee Schuneman, who then started a Microsoft studio and needed to incubate someone. Like, there is literally, over the last 10.5 years, it's a Jenga. It's just a stack of Jenga, right? And you could take out one of those pieces and we wouldn't be here now. We just wouldn't have been here. And it's, so like, there's no secret blueprint for making a successful game studio, like, or surviving, which is really what we've done. We just got very lucky that we had such an incredible supportive network around us.
Yeah, definitely. And it's definitely, like, to you must be like this just dream come true, where you're just like, I get to do this for a living now and make what you love. And like, you almost got to like pinch yourself that you're like,
oh, daily. like actually daily. Like, I have that, I did a talk at a college, I think it was last week. And one of the questions somebody said to me was like, do you ever have to stop and like look around? Like, do you ever like stop and go, oh my God, like I made this? And that happens daily. Like, quite often it'll be when I'm working late and the team have gone home and I just stop for a second, and I don't like to think about it because it's so intense to think that, like, you know, Dlala Studios now, like, I'm in the office at the moment. We've got these lovely 3 buildings. My parents' old house that they don't live in anymore, but the garage Dlala formed in is like a 5-minute walk around the corner. And for us to have gone from a garage where we were working on a PC that was makeshift parts donated by our friends to where we are, like, it's still completely surreal. Like, I don't know if it ever will feel real, to be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, especially given the business that we're in, that like so many games fail. So many of them, like the mobile space is one of the most ruthless spaces around, where if your game isn't in like the top 10 those first few days, it's just going to be nothing but a downward slope. And so it's always great to see, like, in any of the game markets, like mobile, console, PC, whatever, like you guys, like, you know, you guys keep going and are continuing to make these really cool experiences. And it's going to be exciting to see like what IP you guys take on next. And I was going to ask, because I know that you guys have 2 of your own IPs going on, and you know, have you guys, with all this time that you're spending on something like Disney, do you guys find any time to work on those other games that you've got going on? Because I know some of them have been in development for a while.
Yeah, no, it's really strange, right? So when we started the studio, we planned to just be original stuff. You know, what was our Earthworm Jim? That was kind of our North Star.
Yeah.
And opportunities came that we never expected that led us down to this path. So we're working on Nothing to Fear, and we're working on Nothing to Fear up until 2018, until I got the call from Craig Duncan saying, are you still interested in Battletoads? Do you want to do it? And obviously since then, it's kind of been a non-stop movement. Like, we literally had that 2 weeks off, and then we went on to a loop. So I think we'll definitely go to original IP at some point, but I think it will always be in parallel with the cool existing IP stuff, because it's strange. Like, creative directors usually have that dream game. What is your dream original game you want to make, right? And I don't really have that. Like, I get just as much creative fulfillment working on stuff like Battletoads and Mickey, because I'm still getting to create a new world. I'm getting to create new characters, but I get to do it with these wonderful existing characters coming along for the journey. So I think you'll see some original IP coming out of Dlala in the next 5 years, but it will probably be someone else creatively directing it. You know, it'll be Craig, or it might be Grant, you know. I think I'll be sticking with the existing IP stuff for a little while. But we loved Nothing to Fear. Like, we absolutely adored working on that game. Every year, because it was about the boogeyman's kid, every year we're like, oh man, we've got this hour and a half. We built an hour and a half of that game really polished, and we're like, should we just release it for free on Halloween? Our agent's always like, no, you don't have to, you never know. And but every year it comes around, and we're like, oh, we could just put it out there, and if no one sees it, no one sees it. Like, but yeah, so yeah, it's really interesting. Like, we love original IP, and I think the team will have great original IP ideas. But I think you always see this backbone of Dlala being these big existing IPs.
Yeah, well, it's sort of the nature of the beast with the business too, where like you need to do that work with like an existing IP or existing company, because that's where a lot of the work comes from, right? And making your own IP is always a giant risk. Like you're throwing your own money into that, and if the thing doesn't do well, you're just like, ah, crap. Well, there's that. There's this thing. Like I've worked at companies before where that they've created their own IP, and it's the same kind of like, oh, well, that didn't work out. Oh, everyone's talking about their shirts.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough because, like you said, the risk is so much higher that it's harder to get publisher funding for original IP. You have to find an audience. There are those breakout hits you get on Kickstarter, but they are few and far between. It is really tough.
But it's got to be really fun, though. Like you said, you enjoy working on these existing IPs and putting your own creative spin on it. There's a lot of freedom that can be had in that. And I imagine, though, like, are there any things, having worked with, like, Rare and having worked with Disney, like, are there any things that they absolutely tell you at the beginning, like, you can't go in this direction, but that you might want to go towards, and you kind of just, like, poke a bit? And you're like, you keep poking, and then hopefully they'll kind of be like, okay, we see what you're doing.
We're always poking. So with Battletoads, it's Rare aren't an independently owned studio anymore. They're owned by Microsoft, right?
Yeah.
So what we would have naturally done is probably have written a teen-rated game for Battletoads, but that doesn't align with Microsoft's values. We wanted something on Game Pass that was really for everyone. So we kind of had to pull the tone back a little bit. The writing, we would push boundaries with the writing and then get pushed back. So that was the big thing with Battletoads. With Mickey and the Fab Four in general, like there were just rules, right? Like how they speak, what words they say, what words they don't say. No cursing, no swapping out curse words for curse word. Like it was about understanding. It's like I said, like Mickey's for everyone, right? So how do you make a Mickey game that is, while it may be more suited for players like ourselves who enjoyed those old games, we still wanted to make sure that if like my niece is in the room while I'm playing, she can have a great time watching it and enjoy it. There's not like it feels like Mickey. It's funny, but like the thing we say is like Disney's whole thing is magic. Like when you think of Disney, you think of magic, and I think Mickey's really the embodiment of that. So there weren't hard and fast rules, but I think that if we had pushed too far, we probably would have found out some more rules. I think we were always pressed against the wall, kind of just nudging, so we never really had any hard pushback.
I can imagine that would be the case. So now that you've worked on like Battletoads and you've worked on Disney Illusion, what are some of the dream IPs you would love to take on and put your own spin on? Like I personally think it would be so dope if you guys did another Earthworm Jim game. That would be amazing.
We had a pitch for Earthworm Jim. I think 2016 we were pitching on trying to do an Earthworm Jim sequel. But I mean, it's a really tough question. There's a lot, right?
Yeah, so many.
It's funny. Every kind of the time we're coming towards the second half of a project cycle, which is when we start thinking about pitching on what's next. We'll make a list. Like often myself, the strategy team, and Grant, our lead designer. Like, what IPs do you want to do? And it's funny because nowadays, like 90% of things on the list we look at and we're like, oh, Disney own that, Disney own that. Disney own that. So there's a lot there that our wonderful friends at Disney own. Obviously, we'd love to do, Star Wars stuff is an absolute pipe dream because I love Star Wars. So being able to do some Star Wars stuff would be fantastic. Marvel, like it'd be wonderful to do. I think about like the old arcade X-Men games. So like us having a dig at something like that would be great. And then obviously like WB has got great stuff, like DC stuff, Animaniacs. Like I'd love to do an Animaniacs game. I think what I'd really love for us to do as a company is that as we move into this new direction with two projects, if one of us is doing that fun, bubbly cartoon, the Mickeys of the world, the Animaniacs, that side, the Looney Tunes, that side of things. And then we're also pushing some maturer stuff as well. And I don't mean we're not going to do a GTA game. We're not going to do violence, but like maybe pushing some IPs into a more mature area or taking some older skewing IPs. Something like Spawn, for instance, would be fantastic to do.
That'd be dope if you guys did like a Spawn game. Oh, that'd be so rad. That would look so cool. I can just picture it.
Yeah. Like, we have a big old list every time we do this. There's a big old list, stuff like Berserker as well, the Keanu Reeves comic book. Like, yeah, like I think there's a lot of IP we'd love to work with, and we've been just absolutely so lucky that I got to fulfill a childhood dream of doing Battletoads, and then what's better than working with Mickey Mouse, right? So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, but so I guess the last question would be, what games are you playing right now?
What am I playing?
Yeah.
I'm playing Psychonauts 2 at the moment. So nice. Tim Schafer is my absolute hero. So Dlala Studios was the reason I make games.
Brutal Legend was so good. I love that game.
So good. And I haven't had a chance to play Psychonauts 2 properly yet because I think it came out as we were finishing Battletoads, starting Mickey. But now that we're kind of in the last couple of weeks of finishing up Illusion Island, I've been giving myself like a few hours a week again to play games. And it's just, I didn't think he could beat the first one. Like, I knew it would play better and control better and a more sturdy engine, but the creativity in that game is just phenomenal. Like, and every single moment just blows my mind. No pun intended. So yeah, I'm playing Psychonauts 2 a lot at the moment. Have I been playing anything else? Oh, I've been Ace Attorneys on
nice.
Attorney Trilogy on my Switch, which is a good one to play in bed.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I'm playing a lot of Illusion Island. The wonderful part of my job is that this part of the project, I need to play it end to end as many times as possible to make sure that I'm happy with it. So this weekend will be a combination of Psychonauts 2 and Disney Illusion Island.
That's a pretty good way to spend a weekend. So lastly, are there any links to a web page that you have, your LinkedIn or anything, like a website you want to throw out there that people can follow you at, or just to see what you're up to?
Sure. So our Twitter is twitter.com/Dlala Studios, DLALA Studios. Disney Illusion Island, it comes out on July 28th. Pre-orders and wishlist are available now in all regions. So you can pre-order it either on the Switch store or at physical retailers. We're really excited for this to come out, and I'd love to see it in a lot of hands, just because, getting to share this project with the world is the biggest high point of my career. So, yeah, that's the main ones for us.
I will definitely be keeping my eyes out for that game and playing the heck out of it when it comes out.
Thank you very much.
So that about wraps it up for us here with, Toon Boom's ATE session for today. I'd like to thank AJ for being with us today. It was super dope to chat with you. I look forward to chatting with you again at some point for whatever you guys are up to next. And we'll see you at the next session.